Kazuya was an orphan who ended up isekai'd in a new world after a ugly accident. In this strange place, 7 gods granted him a special leveling system, making him overpowered in his whole world. One day, while heading home, he saw people running out of a store in a panic. 2 girls fell near him, and a thief with a knife rushed at them. Instead of running, Kazuya tackled the thief, telling the girls to escape. He got stabbed in the stomach, and the thief fled. As he lay there, bleeding, he was glad he saved the girls in his worthless life but regretted making them cry. Kazuya's vision faded, and when he woke up, he was in a mysterious room. A maid called him Cain and started crying, calling for his mother. A mommy hugged him, asking if he remembered her. Cain was confused until he saw himself in a mirror and realized he was a child. After a week in a coma, the maid thought his fever had affected his memory. Cain's mother asked the maid, Sylvia, to make him soup. Alone in the room, Cain wondered how he had turned into a kid. He thought he might be in an anime or an isekai. He started looking around his room for powerful weapons but found none. He checked if he had his huge rod. Sylvia mistook his discomfort for wetting himself, and Cain felt embarrassed about losing it. Once Sylvia left, Cain pieced together his new identity. He was Cain von Silford, a 3-year-old boy with parents Garm and Sarah, a sister named Reincarnated, and 2 older siblings from his dad's second wife, Maria. His father is a man of culture and also a high-ranking margrave protecting the kingdom from monsters. Excited about the existence of monsters and adventurers, Cain was eager to learn magic. Sylvia promised to teach him magic if he learned to read, so he started practicing immediately. Cain decided he wanted to stay in this world, as his old life was lonely after losing his parents and grandfather. At dinner, Garm is surprised to learn his son Cain can write, and Reincarnated mentions he's already good at math. Sarah thinks Cain is a genius. Cain, being humble, praises Sylvia, calling her the best maid ever, which makes his parents a bit suspicious. They wonder why he suddenly got so interested in studying. Sylvia mentions giving him milk from his mom's plot, making Garm wish he'd seen that. Cain says he just wants to learn everything about this world to become an adventurer. Garm, impressed by his enthusiasm, lets him read all his magic books but warns that he can't actually use magic until he's baptized at age 5. His mom agrees, thinking he won't manage before then anyway. But Cain is already secretly practicing magic. He realizes he can use magic, which is every weeb's dream. One night, while trying a new spell, he burns his hands and loses control for a moment but is excited about his new powers. Reincarnated sneaks into his room and reveals she knows about his secret studies. Cain is relieved she doesn't fully understand his abilities. She starts teaching him more about the outside world and the legendary first adventurer, Yuya, who built their kingdom. Cain can't wait for his baptism. When the day finally comes, he dresses in a new outfit, and his family is impressed by how handsome he looks. They travel through town in horse-drawn carriages, and Cain is fascinated by the medieval scenery. Curious about the gods' blessings, he asks Reincarnated to show him her status window. He's amazed by her stats but notices she has a broken status. Reincarnated quickly tells him to forget what he saw, and Cain pretends he doesn't know what she's talking about. Meanwhile, Garm explains that there are multiple levels to the protections granted by the gods. Each magic protection is rated between levels 1 and 5, determining one's prowess in a specific field. At the church, the priest starts the baptism ceremony. Suddenly, light starts to shine and Cain is teleported to a different realm where he meets the 7 gods. They call him by his original name, Kazuya, and he thinks who the f*** is that Santa? Zenom, the god of creation, introduces himself and looks like Santa Claus. But Zenom can hear his thoughts. They discuss his worthless sacrifice because if he hadn't intervened, the criminal would have been caught without his help. The gods tells Cain they reincarnated him because he died doing a good deed, even if it wasn't necessary. Still, Cain doesn't regret doing it because now he has been reincarnated into a beautiful family, can use magic, and can have a harem like in any other isekai anime. The gods then give him various gifts. Reno, the god of magic, grants him magical protection. Zenom, the god of creation, offers his protection. The god of war makes him a powerful warrior. The god of technology boosts his intelligence. The god of commerce gives him the ability to judge in an item box, and the god of earth grants him the best power to develop plots. Zenom explains that Cain's status window will show all these protections. After a bit of laughter, they send him back. The priest is astonished by the glowing statues and asks to see Cain's status window. Feeling uneasy, Cain rushes to the bathroom to check it himself. He finds out that all his protections are at level 10, twice the highest level in the world. Knowing he must hide this, he uses a secret ability called Status Conceal to mask his true strength. That night at dinner, Cain was with his family celebrating his birthday. Garm asked if they could finally see his status window. Cain agreed and showed it to everyone. They were all shocked to see that he had blessings from all 7 gods and a magic level over 340,000. At just 5 years old, he was stronger than most mages in the country. His father panicked and made him promise to keep his stats a secret. Cain reluctantly agreed and went to bed. In his room, he noticed a notebook about summoning magic. Since Sylvia wasn't around, he decided to try his first summon. Hoping to get a cute pet in the backyard, he activated the summoning circle. But instead of a cute animal, a giant ugly monster appeared. His sister and Parma screamed in fear. Cain remembered a similar situation from before, but this time he vowed it would be different. He charged at the monster, but it punched him, causing him intense pain. Despite the agony, Cain promised he wouldn't let his loved ones cry again. Using all his strength, Cain cast a powerful spell to make the monster disappear. As he lay on the ground, he saw the fluffy cat ears he had hoped for and wished he could have touched them. He regretted causing fear and worried he might not make it. After a few minutes, he woke up and realized he was still alive. This time, his loved ones were safe and not crying. Cain understood that his powers could actually protect and help people in this world. On the day of his birthday, Cain's father asked him what he wanted to be in the future. Cain confidently announced that he wanted a harem of his own. I mean to travel the world and help people, becoming an adventurer to protect everyone's smiles. Hearing his determination, Garm promised to hire a tutor for him. In his room, Cain wondered what his tutor would be like, but when she arrived, he got so excited that he accidentally teleported outside and landed in best plot position. He quickly apologized to the girl, and the butler introduced Cain's 2 tutors, Millie and Nina. Inside the mansion, Millie struggled with embarrassment over the earlier incident, while Cain noticed that Nina was an elf. Garm told them to be informal, and Cain asked them to talk to him like a friend. Millie was eager to start teaching, and they began lessons in the mansion's training area. Cain showcased his sword skills, shocking Millie. To test his abilities, Millie suggested a mock duel. Cain charged at her, and she barely managed to defend herself. Nina wondered if he had the war god's blessing, and Cain admitted he was supposed to keep it a secret. Exhausted, Millie asked Nina to teach Cain some magic before he destroyed her plot. Nina revealed she had level 3 magic protection, but Cain had already mastered the basics. He demonstrated his ability to summon magic from all elements, with his spells piercing through stone targets. Cain also revealed he had the protection of the magic god. Basically, the tutor are more waffless. Millie worried they couldn't teach him anything. He pulled a towel from his item box, making the girls realize they were outmatched. Cain suggested they study outside the mansion to avoid destroying it. Since he had never left the premises, Millie and Nina thought it would be good for him to explore. They explained to Garm that Cain's abilities were too strong for the mansion, causing Garm to panic at how powerful his son had become. He had anticipated this day but hoped Cain would be older. Reluctantly, Garm agreed to let Cain go outside on the condition that he never enters the forest. Cain promised and left the mansion for the first time with his tutors. Nina started Cain's magic training by asking him to show some intermediate spells. Cain immediately prepared a fire spell and cast it at a stone, creating a huge crater and knocking both girls off their feet. They wondered if using all that mana tired him out, but Cain was just laughing, not even sweating. Suddenly, Millie noticed enemies nearby. A rabbit jumped from the bushes and attacked Millie, but she missed. The rabbit then charged at Cain, but he dodged it and defeated it with air bullets. Millie asked if he was going to sell the drops, but Cain wanted to show them to his family, so he stored it in his item box. Millie was amazed since she had been saving for years to get a magic bag, a less powerful version of Cain's item box. Meanwhile, Nina used her search ability to scan for monsters within 300 meters. Cain thought it was cool and tried to copy her spell, successfully locating 4 rabbits. Nina was surprised he could count the exact number. They all ran towards the rabbits, and at this point Millie told Nina to give up trying to keep up with Cain. They defeated the rabbits together, but one got away. Cain tried to chase it, but Millie warned him never to enter the forest because it was home to legendary monsters that occasionally tried to invade the city. Cain understood the danger but still dreamed of exploring it someday. That night, Cain realized he had already reached level 8 after defeating just a few rabbits. He discovered that his God-chosen title gave him 100 times more XP and ability points per level. Realizing how powerful he was becoming, he worried the nation might see him as a threat. A few months later, Millie took Cain to the Adventurers Guild to fight stronger monsters. Inside, Ruddy asked what they needed, and Millie requested quests suitable for Cain. However, a man mocked Millie and Nina for being D-rankers and babysitting a kid. He suggested Millie ditch Cain to see what a real man looked like. Nina told him to back off, but he got angry and picked her up while his friends restrained Millie. Just as he was about to grab Nina, Cain stepped in, saying he wouldn't let anyone treat his tutors like that. Millie begged Cain to run, but Cain insisted he needed to start his training and slapped the man in the face. The man tried to punch Cain, but Cain dodged and disrupted his balance. Cain introduced himself, but the man kept attacking. He pulled out a knife and lunged at Cain with incredible speed. But Cain dodged every strike and even held the knife with his fingers before throwing him out. The other two men held knives to Millie, but Cain quickly dealt with them, kicking them out as well. Nina thanked Cain and promised to protect him next time. After years of training and fun times together, Cain has grown into a tall, charming young man. Sylvia informs him that his final class with his tutors is in a few days, and Cain feels excited and grateful. He recalls that Millie wanted a magic bag, so he decides to get her one as a thank you gift. That night, he sneaks into the deepest parts of the dark forest. He encounters and defeats a blood ogre and an earth dragon. The guards, thinking a monster rampage is imminent, deploy the entire army with Garm leading the troops. Cain gathers what he needs and teleports away, leaving behind a towel. When Garm arrives, he is shocked to find Cain's towel amidst the defeated monsters. On the final day of Cain's tutoring, Millie and Nina have bittersweet feelings about their time with him coming to an end. They congratulate him on his graduation and hard work over the last 3 years. Cain thanks them and presents them with the magic bags he made, explaining they were crafted from materials he collected from the forest. He reassures them that the bags won't hold too much, just enough for an entire mansion. Millie, amazed, tells him that even the most expensive magic bags can only carry 2 carriages worth of items. Millie told him if anyone else find about the bags, they might become the bounty. But she is relieved when Cain reveals he has enchanted the bags to be extremely heavy if carried by anyone else. Grateful, Millie and Nina thank him and promise to always be there for him if he needs help. After that, their long journey together come to an end. Months later, Cain faces a red dragon in a deep cave and defeats it with a single strike. He realizes his magic level is over 80 million and earns the title of Dragon Slayer. 2 years pass, and now 10-year-old Cain is set to attend a noble event for his birthday. The journey will take a week if they aren't interrupted by monsters. Using his search ability, Cain scans a 3-kilometer radius and discovers soldiers being ambushed by monsters. He tells his dad to hurry, but the horses are too slow. Leaping from the carriage like Iron Man, Cain uses his wind magic to dash towards the soldiers. Cain saves one of the cornered soldiers and uses his air cutter ability to eliminate the monsters. However, some beasts charge towards the carriage, prompting Cain to summon his sword and dispatch them with a single swing. Facing the boss monster, he dodges and leaps into the sky, enchanting his sword with fire before slaying the beast. The soldier warns Cain to stay away from the carriage, but Cain introduces himself as Garm's son. Just then, Garm's soldiers arrived and quickly realized they were no match for the situation. A soldier collapsed from blood loss, and Cain used his healing ability to help him and the other injured soldiers recover instantly. Garm arrived shortly after and saw the chaotic scene but recognized the royal crest on the carriage. 2 girls, Telestia the princess and Silk the duke's daughter, appeared. They thanked Garm, but he told them it was his son Cain who saved them. Telestia nearly fainted, so Cain used a special spell to help her feel better, soothing everyone's pain and anxiety. Telestia immediately thanked Cain, while Silk held his hand, thinking he was the greatest swordsman she had ever seen. Telestia claimed him as hers, and the girls began to argue. They dragged Cain into their carriage, taking him away right in front of Garm. Inside the large carriage, Cain wondered why the girls sat so close to him. Telestia, too scared for him to leave, told him to call her Teles, while Silk asked him to call her Silk. The spell had been too effective, and the girls kept trying to charm him. The soldier announced they were approaching the rest area, and Cain thought the situation was getting messy. When they arrived at the rest area, Cain tried to escape, but Telestia and Silk insisted they wanted to spend the night with him, claiming they were too scared. Garm argued it was inappropriate, but the girls said they were traumatized and afraid of another attack. Silk told Garm he was worthless compared to Cain. They begged Cain to stay, and he agreed if the beds were separated as far as possible. Garm drops his wisdom on having 2 wives comes with double the headaches. Inside the bedroom, the girls begged Cain to sleep next to them. They pushed the beds together and ended up using Cain as a body pillow. Cain, feeling overwhelmed, realized he had accidentally created his own harem at the age of 10 and wished he could be single forever. He didn't get any sleep that night, but after a few more sleepless nights, they finally arrived at the capital. The head knight greeted them, and the girls clung to Cain. The knight bowed to honor Cain, having heard how heroically he saved everyone. Cain's item box allowed him to return the bodies of fallen soldiers to their families. The bell rang, and Cain tried to leave, but the knight informed him he had a meeting with the king. Every major politician had gathered for Cain's audience with the king. Cain bowed, and the king praised him for saving Telestia and Silk from 50 orcs, rewarding him with a mansion, 10 platinum coins, and the honorary title of Baron. Some ugly fatso complained about giving a child such wealth. The king told Corgino to stop talking or remain fat forever. The king stated the kingdom needed more knights like Cain and refused to change his decision, sending Corgino away. The king asked Cain if he accepted the rewards, and Cain humbly agreed. However, the king wasn't finished. He wanted to speak with Cain privately. Garm congratulated his son on getting a mansion before his brothers. The king entered with the 2 girls, and Cain realized he couldn't mention that Bang her Telestia and Silk the previous night. The king and the duke thanked Cain for saving their daughters. Then King told Cain there was something important to discuss. He asked if Cain would agree to be engaged to his daughters and the duke's daughter. They wouldn't get married until Cain was an adult, but because he had spent the night with unmarried ladies, no one else would marry them now. The king said Cain had to accept to avoid the wrath of the gods. This idea had been thought up by the count to learn more about Cain, but the king was surprised that both girls actually wanted to marry Cain. Worried about Cain's growing power, the king wanted to keep him in the kingdom. Cain felt this was the worst situation he had ever faced. His father offered no help, and the pressure was too much. With no other option, Cain agreed to be their future husband. Telestia and Silk were happy and said they would never forget their last night. Cain tried to explain it was all a big misunderstanding because of the position of beds. They asked what the fuck that means, and he apologized. A few days later, Cain visited the royal church to meet with the gods. Zenom wondered why it took him so long, but Cain explained that his stats had become too overwhelming, making him the strongest human alive. Zenom asked if Cain wanted to become a demigod, but even with such a status, there were still limits to what he could achieve alone. Zenom advised him to build strong relationships and asked if Cain could create some entertainment based on his previous life's knowledge. Cain thought he could create the perfect game, and Zenom and the god of technology eagerly encouraged him. Later that day, Reincarnated was shopping for clothes, and Cain, tired of her obsession, ran outside and noticed Parma, the girl he had saved 5 years ago. Her uncle, Tamanis, introduced himself and was surprised to learn that Cain was a noble. Cain asked to be treated like any other kid and browsed Tamanis' antique shop, where every item was handmade by Tamanis. Cain requested a special order, showing him the blueprints of the game he wanted to create. Tamanis found the concept interesting and agreed to make a prototype. Cain paid him a full gold coin, calling it an investment in their relationship. Tamanis humbly accepted and promised to create the best game board for him. Cain left the shop, only to find Reincarnated furious for disappearing on her. She demanded to know why he didn't see all the clothes she tried on for him. Cain bluntly said she'd look beautiful in all of them. Reincarnated, surprisingly pleased that her brother thinks she's beautiful, decided to make his day. This lowly spent all night trying on different outfits to impress him and planned to punish him by making him try them on. However, Sylvia came to the rescue, informing Cain that Tamanis had finished the prototype. Cain was amazed at how perfectly it matched his vision. They spent the afternoon playing the game together, and Tamanis was confident it would become a hit. Cain suggested creating a fancier version for the nobles, predicting wealthier people would want a luxurious product. He proposed making 50 noble versions and 1,000 regular versions. Tamanis agreed but mentioned his company couldn't afford such a large inventory. Cain solved the problem by smashing some more gold coins like a billionaire. To protect their product, they created a patent by presenting the board to the commerce god and committing to their contract, which glowed golden, signaling its fulfillment. Cain made one more request for an extravagant game for the royal family. Tamanis was honored, and Parma was impressed by Cain's connections. Cain knew the gods were probably enjoying the game he created for them. The next day was Cain's debut ceremony. Garm warned him to watch out for parents trying to introduce their daughters. Cain jokingly replied that he would create the largest harem, shocking Garm with his boldness. Inside the castle, Cain saw Corgino with his children and thought he looked unpleasant. The Duke and Silk approached, and while the Duke's smile made Cain uneasy, he thanked Cain for saving his daughter. Realizing he was in a tight spot, Cain boldly told Silk she was the most beautiful girl in all the lands and promised never to leave her. Garm, not one to let his son be outdone, told the Duke that Cain was the main character, and they walked off. Garm then told Cain he didn't act like a typical 10-year-old. The royal guards blew the trumpets, and the king made his entrance. Cain, too smitten with the princess's beauty, barely listened to the speech. Afterward, he greeted the king and told the princess she was more beautiful than a goddess, deciding against saying anything too forward. He promised Telestia he would never leave her. The king, impressed by Cain's charm, praised Garm for raising such a charismatic son. Cain apologized for his banter and presented the king with the reversey game he had developed. The king, intrigued, wanted to hear more and commanded Cain to visit his room later or face execution. Cain reluctantly agreed. Garm asked when Cain had become such a business magnate. Cain explained he needed to manage his mansion, noting he was now richer than his own father. Garm accepted the playful insult, proud that his children had become more successful. He encouraged Cain to make friends his age. Just then, Silk arrived and tried to steal Cain away. They sat together, and Silk made sure Telestia didn't have a chance with him. However, Corgino's children interrupted. One complimented Silk's dress, but she ignored him. One of the lackeys told Cain to leave, but Cain introduced himself instead. Habit, one of the lackeys, told Cain to apologize for bothering Silk. Cain refused and said Habit should apologize first. Infuriated, Habit challenged Cain to a duel. Silk, worried, hugged Cain for protection, but Habit insisted on starting the battle. Silk continued to hold on to Cain, frustrating Habit's lackeys, who tried to summon a storm with a rain dance. Silk told them to stop, revealing that Cain was a baron and the third son of Baron von Silford, who had saved the princess from an army of 30 orcs. Habit and his lackeys, realizing their mistake, bowed and begged for forgiveness before running away. Silk realized Cain could have revealed his status at any time but chose to make them look foolish. She promised to tell the princess about it, but Cain begged her not to. Silk agreed to keep it a secret if Cain went on a date with her. Telestia arrived and asked what the secret was. Cain stopped Silk from speaking, but Telestia, feeling left out, demanded a date with Cain too. Cain, thinking she looked cute, agreed. The king overheard and asked what was happening. Telestia told him to mind his business, making Cain realize he had raised a monster. The king said they needed a long talk, and Cain feared he was finally going to be executed for his interactions with both the princess and the duke's daughter. The next day, Cain played the game he invented with the count, but the king got upset because he wasn't invited. The duke congratulated Cain on the game and wanted to play reversey with him and everyone else in the palace. Cain started regretting making the game. After a week of avoiding the king, Cain finally visited his new mansion. It was in terrible shape, not maintained for years. Using his magic, he cleaned and fixed up the entire place, including the backyard. Everything looked brand new. Sylvia arrived, excited to be his personal maid, and brought a team of maids and a butler to help with the noble duties. The maids were amazed to see the place spotless, and Cain explained he had used magic to clean it. Colin, the butler, reminded Cain that his older brothers were visiting today. At Garm's mansion, Cain's brothers congratulated him on getting his own place first. They were proud of their younger brother. Cain gave his family a tour of his new mansion. Garm, remembering it as a wreck, was confused and asked if Cain had fixed it up. Cain admitted he used magic to remodel it. Sarah was proud of her strong son, unlike Garm, who is worthless. Garm wished Cain had decorated the place more like other nobles, with fancy items like paintings, vases, and mounted trophies. Cain had an idea and disappeared for a moment. When he returned, Sylvia and the maids were screaming at the sight of a mounted red dragon. Garm asked why it was there, and Cain explained he had defeated the dragon himself. Garm was impressed, knowing the dragon was worth a lot of money. Suddenly, Sarah screamed from the bathroom. Cain and Garm rushed in to find her amazed by the fancy toilet. Garm tried it out and realized it would impress their guests. Cain wondered why they'd have visitors, and Garm explained that owning a mansion meant hosting a debut party and inviting nobles. Cain wasn't thrilled, but Colin presented a guest list to make it easier. As Cain looked through the list, he saw that his least favorite person, Ugly Faso, was invited, but not the king. Only counts or higher-ranked nobles could invite royalty. Cain realized the party required lots of preparation and gifts. Sylvia suggested creating unique gifts and a special type of hospitality. Inspired, Cain used his magic to make glass cups, as porcelain was common. For food, he chose hamburgers, which Sylvia loved, and for drinks, carbonated wine, which she found interesting. Colin then informed Cain that the king wanted to see him. The king was angry and demanded to know why he hadn't been invited to Cain's party, slamming his desk in frustration. The duke smugly showed his invitation, suggesting Silk was the better daughter. The king, almost in tears, complained about being neglected by his future son-in-law. Cain quickly explained he hadn't had the chance to give the king his invitation due to his busy schedule. He handed over the invitation, and the king happily showed it off, announcing that Telestia would be attending too. The night of the debut party arrives, and Cain welcomes everyone inside. The Duke arrives with Silk, and Cain compliments her as the most beautiful there. They admire the red dragon statue, and Silk can't wait to live there with him. Colin informs Cain it's time for his speech, so Cain thanks everyone for coming and hopes they enjoy his offerings. He raises his drink for a toast, and his parents love the fizzy taste. The glasses, which look like treasure chests, also impress them. Cain announces that he prepared them as gifts for everyone to take home. The king arrives and tastes the fizzy drink, experiencing a heavenly sensation. When he bites into the hamburger, he's amazed by the creamy cheese and meat combination, describing it as harmony in his mouth. Telestia enjoys it too. The queen, having tried the bathroom sprayer, begs Cain to install one in the royal bathroom. Curious, the king tries it and has a loud reaction that everyone hears. He exits the bathroom nonchalantly and scolds Cain for keeping the sprayer from him, demanding it be installed immediately. Cain promises to do so, and the king praises his hospitality, calling it the ultimate experience. The entire crowd congratulates Cain, filling him with joy for his efforts being recognized. However, Colin informs him that trouble is on the way. Corgino arrives and immediately insults Cain's mansion, calling it a dog house. Cain doesn't let Colin warn him about the dragon statue, so when Corgino sees it, he screams in terror. Cain apologizes, saying the expensive red dragon surprised him. Corgino criticizes Cain's taste, but everyone else thinks Corgino's attitude is vile, especially since he arrived after the king. At the table, Sylvia offers Corgino some carbonated wine, which he initially insults but ends up loving. He calls the hamburger disgusting but eats every last bit. All the nobles notice his mistreatment of Cain. Colin warns Cain to stay composed, giving Cain a brilliant idea. He offers Corgino some glasses, calling them a meager offering. Corgino insults them but demands 100 glasses in the hamburger recipe. Cain refuses, saying they are gifts for everyone at the party. Frustrated, Corgino demands immediate compliance. Cain tries to stall, mentioning an even more amazing red object approaching. Corgino, excited, asks to see it right away. Cain introduces the kingdom's most valuable jewel, the king himself, who appears behind Corgino. Corgino is shocked and asks why the king is at such a lowly person's home. The king angrily responds that Cain saved his daughter, and the Duke questions Corgino's actions. The king threatens to strip Corgino of his rank if he continues to mistreat Cain. Corgino, trying to save face, claims he was impressed by the meal and hospitality. The king commands him to start acting like a noble and to leave immediately. Silk approaches Cain, knowing he set everything up, and the Duke asks if they were used as part of Cain's plan. Cain smiles, realizing that his careful planning paid off, and the event ends successfully. A week later, Cain was walking when Captain Dame approached him. The Prime Minister had sent Dame to get some monster materials from Cain, so Dame led him to the storage room. However, Cain thought the room was way too small for what he had. Dame was taken aback, wondering if Cain had materials the size of the red dragon in his mansion. Cain clarified that it was actually from the legendary Earth Dragon, which a party of the strongest adventurers couldn't defeat. Dame was shocked but instructed Cain to leave the monsters in the field. Cain released all the rare monsters from his item box. Seeing the sheer number, Dame asked if Cain was a hero or a disciple of the gods, causing Cain to panic for a moment. He said goodbye and tried to leave, but Dame invited him to train with the knights and meet their leader. Cain realized he was in over his head again. Dame introduced Cain to the soldiers and announced they would be dueling him. One soldier, worried about fighting a 10-year-old, suggested Cain go first. Cain agreed, activated his boost ability, and defeated the soldier in a flash. Trying to leave, Dame insisted Cain fight all the soldiers at once. This is how Cain ended up facing the entire army. Just as Cain was about to be overwhelmed, the leader shouted for everyone to stop. She asked why the whole army was fighting a child and hugged Cain, trying to comfort him. Cain was stunned to see she was an elf. She demanded an explanation from Dame, who revealed that Cain had saved the princess from 30 orcs. Understanding the situation, she challenged Cain to a duel herself, emitting a menacing aura. The soldiers thought this would be the end for Cain and wished him well in the afterlife. Cain noticed she was using a real sword and asked why. She said it made things more interesting and rushed at him. Despite his efforts, her agility was unmatched. She enhanced her physical abilities, and they clashed swords, impressing the soldiers with her speed. Cain tried various tactics but couldn't break through her defense. Finally, he used his teleportation ability, appearing next to her with his sword at her throat, declaring the duel over. The elf, experiencing the thrill of her life, hugged Cain and declared she was going to marry him. Cain, bewildered, pointed out they had just met. She introduced herself as Tefana, the Duke's daughter, and reassured him that elves live for 300 years, so she would stay young for a long time. Cain tried to escape, saying she needed her father's approval first. She replied that her family wouldn't let her return home without a spouse. Cain insisted he needed to ask permission from many people first and looked to Dame for help, but he had fallen asleep. Tefana then decided to take the matter to the king, dragging Cain along. Cain thought this was the worst possible outcome as they headed to the palace. Inside the king's castle, the king was surprised to see Cain back so soon. Tefana, her voice changing, announced they were going to get married. The king asked for an explanation, and Cain explained that he had beaten her with his wooden stick so skillfully that she now wanted to marry him. The other girls hadn't heard about this, but that wasn't the main issue. Dame explained that Tefana was not just the army leader but also essentially a princess from an elf kingdom. The king broke the news to her that Cain was already engaged to his daughter and the Duke's daughter. Tefana, shocked but impressed, thought Cain must be amazing to have won over both. The king knew this was difficult, but Tefana wanted to marry Cain even more. The king said he would only discuss it further if she got her father's permission. Tefana agreed and told Cain they were going to spar with their sticks to deepen their bond. The king wondered how the strongest knight in the kingdom was defeated and asked Garm if he knew Cain's story. Garm was clueless, but Dame remembered Cain's panic when the gods were mentioned. This made the king suspicious. The count suggested testing Cain by showing him a mythical book. Cain, exhausted from a week of training, heard Tefana calling him and tried to escape, but Dame dragged him to the king's room. The king asked why Cain looked so sad, and Cain replied that he was tired of seeing the king's ugly face. The king ignored the insult and said he had something to show Cain. The count presented an emperor-level magic book, passed down from the first king, Yuya. Cain asked if he could read it, and the king gave permission. As Cain read the book, he realized he knew all the spells and was glad to learn how to cast them. The king revealed that the text was in a language no one else could read, Japanese. Cain realized the first king must have also reincarnated. The king asked Cain to explain who he truly was. Cain, deciding to trust them, revealed that he had memories from his previous life in Japan, the same land as the first king. He apologized for not telling them sooner. Garm asked if he was really his son, and Cain confirmed that the gods had told him so when he turned 5. The entire room was shocked that Cain had met the gods. Garm asked Cain to show his real status. The room panicked when they saw his levels, which were beyond human. The king didn't know what to do, as Cain's god's chosen title meant he was the epitome of humanity, and even kings should bow to him. Cain begged them to treat him the same as before, explaining that despite his past life's memories, this was the life he had always wanted, with a loving family and incredible abilities. The king accepted Cain's wish and promised to treat him the same. However, he joked that maybe Cain should be king instead. Just then, Tefana entered with her father's consent to marry Cain, adding another girl to Cain's growing harem. She took him away, and the Duke assured the king that Cain would always be the same. The king ordered everyone to keep Cain's secret and wished for Cain to protect the kingdom, his family, and anyone in need. In the years that followed, Cain got really into reading the book left by Yuya. It said that if Cain could read it, he must be from Japan, just like Yuya. The book talked all about Yuya's life, including how he got hit by Truck Kun and ended up in this new world. Unlike Cain, Yuya wasn't reborn, he was just summoned here. While Cain was reading, Silk and Telestia came in, thinking he was studying for the academy entrance exams. They offered to study with him, but Cain, feeling annoyed, told them he didn't have time for their nonsense today. When they asked about tomorrow, he brushed them off, saying maybe some other time. As he walked down the hall, another girl, admirer number 3, ran towards him, asking for a training session. Cain, still in a hurry, promised another time and ran off. Today was special for Cain. It was his 12th birthday and the day he would register as an adventurer at the guild. As he entered the guild, he bumped into a red-haired man who noticed Cain's young age and reminded him to be careful. Cain thought the man looked familiar but continued to the receptionist, who asked if he wanted to register. He filled out the paperwork, deciding to hide his barren status since it wasn't important for adventuring. After handing over the form, the receptionist asked him to prick his finger for a blood magic test, and then gave him a G-rank adventurer's card. Cain remembered his tutors being D-rank and wondered how they were doing. The receptionist introduced herself as Resha, but 3 men interrupted, trying to get her to ditch Cain and hang out with them. Their leader tried to kick Cain but ended up falling. The other 2 rushed at Cain but crashed into each other. As the leader drew his sword, Cain calmly told him to wait. Just then, the red-haired man approached, offering to fight the troublemakers himself, causing them to flee when they recognized him as Claude. Cain thanked Claude, though Claude suspected Cain could handle himself. Claude invited Cain for a drink, giving him fruit juice since Cain was only 12. Curious about Cain's skills, Claude asked about his training, and Cain mentioned his tutors. Impressed, Claude cheered for Cain becoming an adventurer and revealed his party's name, Ice Flame. He explained that he used a flame sword while his wife used ice magic, allowing them to take on big quests and rank up quickly. Cain was impressed by Claude's gold card, showing he was a rank, but Claude downplayed it, mentioning the first king's legendary SS rank. Just then, a wand hit Claude on the head, and his wife, Rena, scolded him for drinking. Claude introduced her to Cain, and Rena thought Cain was adorable. She offered to deal with any troublemakers for him, but Claude explained that Cain was quite capable himself. Annoyed, Rena threatened Claude and dragged him away by the ear, leaving Cain amused by the encounter. Cain wondered what kind of quest he should take with his G rank. He considered transporting items using his item box but decided that sounded too boring. Instead, he spotted a quest to defeat as many goblins as possible with no upper limit on the reward. Excited, he grabbed the quest and ran out of the guild, only to be stopped by Tefana, who had finally caught up to him. She asked what he was doing, and Cain explained he was heading out on his first adventure. Tefana decided to ditch her plans and join him, despite Cain's attempts to escape. Deep in the forest, Tefana was thrilled to spend some time with Cain in the beautiful scenery. Cain used his search ability and located a group of goblins ahead. Tefana eagerly rushed towards them, asking Cain to follow. When they arrived, they saw a civilian in danger. Cain quickly cast a healing spell on the civilian while Tefana charged at the goblins, taking them down with ease. A larger group of goblins appeared, and Cain used his magic to boost Tefana's physical abilities. She thanked him and continued fighting fiercely, vowing to stay by his side no matter what. Cain couldn't help but think that Tefana was a bit crazy, but he let her handle the goblins. Meanwhile, green lizards emerged, and Cain told Tefana he would deal with them. She ran off with the civilian, and Cain used his light and ice magic to eliminate the lizards. Tefana praised him, calling him the best husband ever. Later that day, Millie and Nina discovered a giant crater where the green lizards used to be, feeling a sense of deja vu. Back at the guild, Cain told Resha he had defeated the green lizards and asked if he could still get the reward even though he hadn't officially claimed the quest. Resha was shocked, as defeating a group of green lizards was usually a C-rank task. Cain explained he had taken down about 30 of them. Resha ran to inform the chief, Cedric, who introduced himself to Cain and questioned how a G-rank adventurer could defeat the lizards. Cedric accused Cain of cheating, but Cain insisted he had defeated them fairly. Cedric, thinking Cain was a commoner trying to scam the guild, threatened to revoke his guild card. Just then, the guild master entered, and Cedric explained the situation. The guild master, recognizing Cain, asked why Cedric thought he was cheating. After hearing Cedric's reasoning, the guild master told him he had a lot to learn. He called for Tefana, who entered and greeted Cain as her husband. Cain reminded her they were supposed to keep their engagement a secret. Tefana explained she was there to warn the guild about the orcs and lizards. The guild master revealed he knew Cain was a baron and the one who saved the princess and Silk from the orcs. He explained that Cain was the son of Margrave Garm and that if he married Tefana, they would become brothers-in-law. Cedric, realizing his mistake, bowed and apologized. Tefana mentioned that usually, a commoner insulting a noble would be executed, but Cain accepted the apology and asked Cedric to avoid making accusations in the future. The guildmaster said they would accept the lizard kills but couldn't keep Cain at G rank. As an apology, he promised to raise Cain to C rank. Tefana thought this was too low, given that Cain had defeated a red dragon and bested her in duels. Cedric, curious about Cain's strength, agreed. The guildmaster commanded Resha and Cedric to handle the paperwork and apologized on behalf of his subordinates. He thanked Cain for understanding and for looking after his sister, who probably pressured Cain into the marriage. Tefana proudly mentioned their first joint task, causing more misunderstandings. Her brother, knowing how lonely and foolish she could be, reassured Cain. The gods, observing this, noted that Cain never changed. The god of magic questioned why Zenom doubled Cain's protections, and Zenom explained that Cain needed to become even stronger as Aaron's seal would soon break, threatening the world. To prepare, the gods agreed Cain needed to train under a mysterious figure. After oversleeping on the day of his exam, Cain was woken up by a panicked Sylvia who blamed herself for not getting him up in time. She frantically offered him breakfast, but Cain quickly ran off, promising to drink her milk later, leaving Sylvia disappointed. Cain teleported to the exam site and wondered why Telestia and Silk weren't there taking the exam with him. The teacher started the 2-hour written exam, but with Cain's knowledge from his past life, he finished in just 30 minutes and spent the rest of the time sleeping. After the written part, the teacher took them to the field for their magic assessment. They were instructed to cast their strongest spells at targets, reassured that a defensive barrier was in place for safety. Other students began with their fireballs, and when it was Cain's turn, he decided to cast a simple fireball. However, his fireball turned blue, surprising everyone. Even the teacher, who had never seen such a powerful spell, tried to stop him, but Cain launched it anyway. The fireball annihilated the entire field, much to everyone's shock. He had thought using beginner-level spells at full power would be safe due to the barrier, but the teacher was stunned by his immense strength at such a young age. She quickly ensured no one was hurt and moved on to the swordsmanship exam at a new field. The professor introduced the adventurers who would be conducting the swordsmanship exam, and Cain recognized Claude among them. Claude was curious about Cain's presence and decided to duel him to assess his abilities. Knowing Claude was an 11th adventurer, Cain activated his boost ability and rushed at him. They clashed, with Cain parrying every attack. Despite Cain's pleas for Claude to relax, Claude, enjoying the challenge, activated his own boost ability. Even with Claude's enhanced speed, Cain managed to fend off all his attacks but worried about breaking the other students' bones with such intense strikes. The teacher yelled for them to stop as the other kids were terrified. Claude realized he had gone too far and promised to have another sword fight with Cain later. The teacher then ended the exam, telling Cain to return later for the results. Cain was concerned about the situation, but Claude acted like there was no problem. At home, Sylvia asked Cain if he wanted some maid milk, but Cain tried to brush her off, saying he finished the exam and everything went fine. Sylvia was happy to hear this and wanted to celebrate by offering him some milk, but Cain said he wasn't hungry. Sylvia, knowing he was lying, got upset and ran away crying. Later, Cain was called to the castle. The king, already expecting trouble, asked Cain what he had done this time. Cain, fed up with the king, lashed out, threatening to use his emperor-level magic to destroy the entire castle if these meetings didn't stop. The king told him to shut up and asked where he took the exam, as Telestia and Silk didn't see him. Cain explained he entered through the south gate and never saw them. The king pointed out that the academy has 2 entrances, one for nobles and one for commoners. Realizing his mistake, Cain was embarrassed. The king criticized Cain for causing problems and mentioned that the teacher had approached the duke about the incident, who found it typical of Cain and laughed about it. The repair bill was hefty, making Cain wish he had been more careful. On the day the exam results were posted, Cain couldn't find his name on the list. Silk rushed in, congratulating him for being at the top of their class. Her father had initially mocked Cain for using the wrong gate, but after hearing how Cain destroyed the area, Silk was impressed. She hinted at wanting Cain to destroy her area, but Cain knew this could end badly. At the entrance gate, Cain met his sister, who ran up to him, congratulating him on being chosen to give the speech as the top student. She hugged him tightly, proud of his achievement. Meanwhile, Sylvia was still upset, wondering if anyone would ever want her maid milk. When Cain arrived, she offered it again, but he harshly declined, hurting her feelings. She hugged him, congratulating him on passing, and said she knew he would succeed. To celebrate, she promised to produce the best milk for him that night. Cain thought she was crazy, and the butler tried to calm the situation, but Cain believed Sylvia would never find a man with her behavior. During the ceremony, Cain waved to his supporters, including Sylvia, who was trying to mask her hurt feelings. He charmed Telestia and Silk, promising to study with them and call them beautiful in front of their fathers again. The ceremony began, and while all the guys were jealous of Cain, the girls were attracted to him. The teacher called Cain up to give his speech. He admitted he had mistakenly taken the commoner exam, but used his wit to turn the situation around. He emphasized that, like the first king, he believed everyone should study and make friends equally, regardless of their background. He prayed for unity among them. Garm, Cain's father, was proud of his son's ability to twist any situation in his favor. The king, having overheard Cain's speech, came up to the stage and mocked Cain, congratulating the students on being accepted and hoping they wouldn't be as useless as Cain. The king's remarks made everyone laugh, especially the girls and the duke, who were glad to see Cain getting a taste of his own medicine. The king apologized to the students, saying they would have to deal with the failure that Garm had raised, giving Cain a final jab. The first class is about to start, and Cain is late after spending an hour crying in the bathroom. The teacher introduces herself and asks the students to think about their future plans. Cain decides he wants to be a free adventurer, and the girls are excited to join him on his adventures. He asks about their plans, and Telestia reveals she will study internal affairs to manage his future kingdom, while Silk says she will study commerce to help with his future endeavors. Cain realizes this is turning into a slave harem situation. After class, Cain noticed Parma being bullied by Habit and his lackeys. They mocked her for being a commoner and demanded she drop out of school. Cain, acting as the knight in shining armor, stepped in and told them to treat everyone equally. Realizing it was Baron Cain, the bullies backed off. Cain declared that Parma was his friend, regardless of her status. Habit threatened to ruin her family, but Silk and Telestia stepped in, asking them to repeat what they had just said. Terrified, the bullies apologized and fled. Cain apologized to Parma and asked if he could pet her cat ears. However, the girls thought he was getting too close to her, and Silk commanded him to sit on his heels. Understanding how things worked, Cain complied, feeling like he should just get a divorce. Suddenly, a voice laughed in his head, inviting him to chat. The mysterious man was waiting in the library. Cain went to the library, opened the door, and was teleported to a different dimension. A man offered Cain coffee, which surprised Cain since he wondered how the man knew about coffee. The man introduced himself as Yuya, the first king of the country. Cain remembered reading about him in the Emperor-level texts, but was confused, thinking Yuya might be a ghost since it had been 300 years. Using his judgment ability, Cain saw that Yuya had the special title of God of Creation, confirming he was the creator of this world. Yuya explained that the gods wanted Cain to be trained. Although Cain believed he was already the strongest, Yuya challenged him to steal a cookie. When Cain leapt forward, Yuya unsheathed his sword, preventing Cain from moving. Yuya revealed that there was someone Cain needed to fight, the evil god Aaron, who had sown distrust and caused wars 300 years ago. Yuya had managed to seal Aaron away, but the seal was weakening, and since Yuya couldn't interfere directly, it was up to Cain. Yuya teleported Cain to the middle of the ocean and gave him a compass pointing back to his mansion. Cain's mission was to reach level 600 to stand a chance against Aaron, and since he was only at level 300, he was worried about his school. Yuya reassured him that a year in this world was equal to one day there. With no other options, Cain rushed into the forest, dodging a serpent's attacks and slashing a giant bear. Within minutes, he faced countless S-rank beasts. Back in the other world, Sylvia panicked as she opened the door to see Telestia and Silk. She apologized for her panic, explaining that she hadn't seen Cain all day. They told her they hadn't seen him at school either. Sylvia started to worry that he might have been kidnapped, imprisoned, or stuck in a ditch. Telestia reassured her that Cain always finds a way out of everything and suggested they wait, confident he would eventually show up. Meanwhile, Cain was battling a giant bear in the forest and managed to annihilate it with his magic. After 4 months without sleep, his mind was starting to break. He heard a puppy whimpering and followed the sound to find a tiny, injured white puppy. Initially, Cain considered putting it out of its misery, but the sad look on the puppy's face reminded him of the girls. He dropped his sword, hugged the puppy, and used his healing magic to help it. Exhausted, he passed out after using all his mana. When he woke up, he saw the puppy had defended him from other beasts while he slept. The puppy jumped on him, licking his face, and Cain decided to name it Haku. Haku's companionship gave Cain the motivation to keep moving forward because he now had someone to protect. Over the years, Cain continued his journey, eventually making it to Yuya's mansion. Yuya was surprised to see how much Cain had grown and noted that Haku was a legendary holy beast, a Fenrir. He explained that Cain could summon Haku anytime using a contract summon. Cain gave it a try, and Haku disappeared and then reappeared. Yuya told Cain his training wasn't over and introduced him to his new master, Durin. Cain was eager to meet his new master, but he wanted to learn more about Aaron first. Yuya remembered his promise and began explaining Aaron's past. At the training site, Durin told Cain he wasn't strong enough. Yuya was stronger than Durin, and Aaron was even stronger than Yuya, so Cain had a long way to go. Cain tried to attack Durin with his boosted speed, but Durin easily evaded and knocked Cain unconscious with a blow to the gut. When Cain woke up, he found himself in an unfamiliar room. Haku, his loyal puppy, came to lick his face. As he went downstairs, he met a beautiful elf girl named Ruri, who promised to make him some food. Cain rushed to meet a baby dragon that sneezed nearby, but Haku jealously jumped on top of him. Ruri finished preparing a meal, and Cain realized he hadn't eaten anything this good in years. Durin encouraged him to eat as much as he wanted, and Rory offered him some elf milkers if he wanted. Meanwhile, back in the other world, Silk and Telestia were worried about Cain, but Telestia reassured Silk that Cain would be fine. Sylvia urged them to hurry up and get their work done, or else her milkers would be the only ones Cain would experience. The girls realized why Sylvia had never dated anyone. Durin was incredibly strong, and Cain struggled to keep up, but he was determined to get stronger to protect those he cared about. After a year of grueling training, Cain was still being pushed to his limits, but the drive to stop Aaron kept him going. He remembered the day Yuya revealed the truth about his past life. Aaron, once the god of amusement in the 8th god of Xenon's world, had been asked by the gods to create a game for their entertainment. However, Aaron's oracle forced everyone to participate in a deadly game. If Aaron were to break free from his seal, he would force the world into chaos once again. To prevent this, Cain needed to become stronger. Cain fought tirelessly to protect those he cared about. Yuya had one more revelation. The friends Yuya couldn't protect were actually Cain's parents. After their deaths in an accident, they were reincarnated into Cain's new world. The gods had tasked them with bringing peace, but even with Cain's mother's powerful inferno spell, her attacks were ineffective against Aaron. Cain's father and Yuya tried to fight Aaron, but with a single blow, Aaron decimated their entire force. In a final effort, Cain's father used all his power to restrain Aaron, allowing Yuya to seal Aaron away with a stone. Cain's parents' last words were apologies to their son. Hearing this, Cain knew he had one goal: to protect those he loved and bring peace to the world. With renewed determination, he used his overload ability and finally defeated Durin. Durin congratulated Cain on completing his training, and Cain ran to his parents' graves, where Yuya revealed that they had always been looking for a way back to him. Cain was grateful to have learned the truth and thanked Yuya for watching over his parents. Yuya, impressed by Cain's growth, opened his fist one final time, and Cain's speed surpassed Yuya's. Cain thanked Yuya for all the training, but Yuya reminded him that Cain had put in all the work. As Cain prepared to return to his old world, Yuya cast a spell to restore Cain to his original form. As his body had changed significantly over the 5 years, Haku, his loyal companion, appeared to join him on his journey. Durin asked if Cain could take Jin along, and Cain promised to take care of Jin and thank them for their guidance. Before returning to his world, Yuya gave Cain a final piece of advice and a gift for the current king. Durin looked forward to the day Cain would surpass both him and Yuya, but Yuya was confident it would happen soon. Cain had something much greater to protect and many people supporting him. When Cain finally got back home, Sylvia ran up to him, offering herself. Cain told her that he missed her during his 5 years away. Telestia and Silk were happy to see him and gave him cookies they had baked. Cain was so moved that he cried while eating them, feeling truly welcomed back. The king read a letter from Yuya, the first king, and doubted it was real until Cain explained that Yuya had created another world and lived there as the god of creation. To prove it, Cain showed him a legendary katana that had slain the black dragon. The king finally believed him but wondered what kind of training the letter mentioned. Cain described his grueling 5-year training, where he fought monsters and survived deadly battles every day. The king was shocked, especially since Cain still looked the same. The Duke reminded Cain that he had forgotten to accept an important quest needed to keep his rank status as an adventurer. At the guild headquarters, the guild master warned Cain that his license would be revoked if he didn't complete the required tasks. Although Tafana had been upset, Cain was focused on maintaining his rank. The guild master explained that Cain needed to defeat 10 bandits between Gracia and the royal capital to keep his rank. Cain confidently accepted the challenge. In the forest, Cain used his flight ability to search for bandits and saw a carriage being attacked. He flew down to help and found that the passengers were Nina, Sabinos, and Millie. Millie was badly injured, so Cain healed her wounds. The bandits underestimated Cain, thinking he was just a kid, but he quickly defeated them with his new katana, protecting his tutors. Sabinos thanked Cain for saving them, and Millie was surprised that Cain could take on a C-rank quest so soon after joining the guild. Cain showed them his adventurer card, proving his high rank, and they were impressed. They took the captured bandits back to the capital, where the residents were horrified by the criminals. At Sabinos' home, Parma greeted Cain and was amazed by his bravery and dedication. Millie was shocked to learn Cain was now a baron and worried she would have to treat him differently, but Cain reassured them that nothing had changed. Millie, relieved, smashed her plot on Cain, which Cain quickly dismissed as he headed to report to the guild, leaving his tutors behind. Inside the guild, Cain handed over the testimony confirming the bandits' subjugation. As Resha congratulated him, a few bandits began harassing Millie and Nina. They were trying to flirt with Millie and offer to show her around the capital, but just as one reached for her, Cain stopped him. The bandit was about to tell Cain to back off, but then he recognized Cain and was intimidated by his aura. Claude arrived, and Cain greeted him warmly. Claude congratulated him on driving away the creeps, and Cain replied that he would do anything to protect his friends. This was the first time Claude heard that Cain had friends and saw Millie and Nina. Cain wondered how Claude knew his teachers, and Claude revealed that Millie was his sister. They all decided to celebrate together and drank some juice. Millie shared the story of how Cain saved them from the bandits, and Nina mentioned that Cain was already a rank adventurer. Claude was shocked at how quickly Cain had caught up to him, but wasn't entirely surprised, given that Cain was the only one to keep up with him during the exam. Millie was baffled because her brother was the only person to ever reach a rank using only sword skills. Nina added that Cain was a baron with his own mansion and joked that he was every gold digger's dream. Claude was shocked to learn that Cain was a baron and apologized for his previous rudeness. Cain told everyone to calm down, and Millie wondered how he had become so strong. Cain realized he couldn't just say he was trained by the gods, but Millie thought it made sense since he killed a red dragon as a kid. Claude joked that Cain might be cheating for defeating an SS rank monster, but Millie and Nina showed off their magic bags. Rena, curious about the bags, asked how much they could hold. Millie revealed she had never filled hers completely, and Nina mentioned they could actually fit a mansion. Realizing these were National Treasure class items, Rena begged Cain to make her one of those bags. Cain promised he would, and Rena passed out. Claude reassured her that she wouldn't remember this tomorrow. Cain was relieved but suddenly remembered he had school the next day and panicked because he missed all of last week. Claude asked how he was fitting in, given that he was a baron, but Cain tried to change the topic. Nina felt bad for him and offered a hug, but Cain ran away, and Claude joked that Cain would probably major in computer science. They noticed Resha looking for someone and asked what was wrong. She explained that she needed a substitute teacher for tomorrow's adventure class. Claude saw this as a perfect opportunity and asked Resha to explain more. The next day in class, the teacher tells everyone to cast their magic at a target. Cain is pumped to show off his powers, but the teacher calls him out, saying he's not allowed to use magic at the academy. His beginner-level magic is too strong and can destroy all the barriers. While spying on him, Claude's group sees that Cain is struggling to fit in and decides to help him out. Later, in their adventure class, the teacher introduces some adventurers who will help them. Claude asks the class who are already adventurers, and when everyone raises their hands, he tells them to show their guild cards. Cain realizes he's in trouble and hesitates. Claude whispers to him to take it out, but Cain doesn't want to make the others feel bad since he has a gold card. He lies, saying he forgot it at home. Claude is disappointed but tells him not to forget it again. Lily and Rena notice the awkwardness and think Cain is definitely overpowered for their group. During training, Claude tells everyone they will learn the boost ability. The students take turns, and Cain is eager to show his skills, but he ends up being the last one in line. This was part of their plan to show how much stronger they are and to impress everyone with Cain's strength when he finally gets his turn. As the class goes on, Cain worries about missing his chance to duel. When it's finally his turn, he and Claude jump towards each other and clash swords, but the bell rings to end the class. The teacher stops the session, and Cain begs for an extra minute, but the teacher refuses. Claude apologizes and promises to battle him next time, but the teacher says there won't be a next time because Cain's magic blew the budget for this episode. Frustrated, Cain takes out his anger by blasting all the trees around him at night. A giant dragon approaches, but Cain slashes it with a single blow. He sees a giant boulder and casts hundreds of fireballs, scorching the ground. The guards, thinking it's the god of destruction, rush towards the source with Garm leading the army. Cain manages to calm down and teleports away. When Garm reaches the crater, he sees Cain's emblem once more. In the king's room, the king confronts Cain, thinking the god of destruction has appeared after the entire forest was scorched. He demands an explanation, but Cain struggles to come up with a response and ends up crying. Meanwhile, far away, a goblin finds an orb, but a dragon eats him in the stone. This weakens the seal, and even though the dragon only consumed a small part of the goblin, it is more than enough to cause trouble. In school, the teacher announces that today's lesson is about summoning magic. She calls out Cain, who thinks it's his cue to leave, but the teacher insists he stays since they're not using attack magic. She introduces Grat, a palace mage, who will be teaching them. Grat explains there are two types of summoning magic, one that forms a bond with a wild monster and another that summons a monster from a magical sigil. Since there are no wild monsters around, they'll use magic circles for the summoning. Each student receives a sigil and begins summoning their familiars. One student summons a giant beast but gets scared and rejects it. Grat reassures him not to worry. Finally, it's Cain's turn. He asks if it's okay to use all his power, and Grat encourages him, saying it's fine. Cain activates the sigil with all his mana, causing a blue light to shine intensely. Grat quickly realizes it's too powerful and begs Cain to stop, but it's too late. A strange man with horns appears, claiming to be the Prince of Darkness. Cain quickly blinds everyone to hide the man's presence. The man approaches Cain, who draws his sword in defense. Surprisingly, the Prince of Darkness kneels and pledges to serve Cain, recognizing him as the chosen one. He offers to form a summoning contract and even to destroy nations with his demon clan if Cain wishes. Cain, however, only wants to destroy plots, and the prince admires this, introducing himself as Seth. Grat, hearing the name Prince of Darkness, is shocked. Cain downplays the situation, saying he couldn't form a contract with someone so powerful. They decide to stick to that story, but Cain is soon called to the king's room for the umpteenth time. The king, tired of these meetings, asks what Cain summoned at school. Cain confesses it was the Prince of Darkness, causing panic in the room. The king is alarmed, but Cain explains he formed a contract with Seth. Everyone is shocked by Cain's power to command such a being. The king asks to see Cain's status window, warning Grat that revealing this secret could lead to his execution. Cain's status reveals he has the title of demigod, and his power is immeasurable. Grat bows and promises to obey Cain. The king, realizing Cain's immense power, considers calling him master but agrees to treat him as before. He decides to bestow a town on Cain, believing a man who can protect a town can protect a nation. Sylvia hears the news and congratulates Cain, promising to give him her best. Cain tries to refuse, but she insists. The butler interrupts, informing them that Garm's town is under threat from monsters in the forest. In town, everyone is getting ready to evacuate, so Cain goes to talk to his brother, Jin. Jin explains that the number of monsters in the forest has been growing, and some are so strong that they remind him of the forces that attacked their city a decade ago. He sent a party to investigate, but they couldn't determine if it was an onslaught or just an increase in monster activity. Because of this uncertainty, they can't deploy knights in large numbers and are trying to handle it cautiously. Cain volunteers to go into the forest, but Jin thinks he's too young. To prove himself, Cain flashes his adventurer's card, reminding Jin that he defeated a red dragon alone. Jin, impressed, asks for Cain's help in the investigation. Cain decides to visit the Adventurers Guild first to get more information. Inside the guild, a new receptionist is shocked to see his high rank. Ruddy, the experienced receptionist, apologizes for the newbie's rudeness and welcomes Cain back, asking why he's there. Cain explains the forest situation, and Ruddy tells him that many adventurers have returned with severe injuries after venturing inside. Millie and Nina arrive, and Cain is happy to see them, particularly focusing on them. They explain that the guild called them to form a strong party to investigate the forest. Cain pretends to be sad for better eye contact, and Millie mentions that her brother and his wife will join them soon. Cain tells Ruddy that he plans to investigate the forest alone, but Ruddy insists he should take someone with him. Cain assures her he has companions. In the forest, Cain summons his two pets who greet him affectionately but quickly act distant. Using his search ability, he feels something ominous but can't pinpoint it. He decides to summon the Prince of Darkness, Seth. Seth kneels before Cain, ready to serve. Cain asks Seth to investigate the forest, sensing something unusual. Seth feels a massive number of high-level monsters and requests to summon a subordinate for assistance. With Cain's permission, Seth summons Dalmatia, one of the 4 heavenly kings who specializes in investigations. Dalmatia, shocked to see Cain, recognizes him as the chosen one of the gods and immediately pledges his service. Cain directs him to investigate the forest. Dalmatia releases a swarm of cockroaches to scout, which terrifies Cain, but they soon locate numerous monsters. Cain swiftly takes them down with a single strike. Dalmatia is amazed by Cain's power and realizes he could have eliminated all the monsters instantly. Cain returns to town, where Millie and Nina are astonished to see the defeated NS rank monsters. Claude arrives, curious about where they found such strong creatures. Cain explains that they were all in the forest, but there are even stronger ones deeper inside. Dalmatia's insects have found something trying to intimidate them, warning them to stay away. Seth, refusing to be scared off, asks Dalmatia if he's gone rusty. They're going to infiltrate the enemy defenses, and Seth tells Dalmatia to see this as a way to keep his muscles strong. As they get closer to the source of the monsters, Aaron's eye spots them and releases a horde of monsters to attack the town. Thousands of creatures begin rushing toward the town, and Seth teleports to Cain's location to inform him that the attack has begun. Cain quickly instructs Ruddy to alert everyone and asks Claude to gather the adventurers to help stop the monsters from reaching the town. Ruddy warns that it's too dangerous for Cain to go alone, but Cain reassures her that he has friends stronger than any rank adventurer. Seth is moved by the fact that Cain considers him a friend and pledges his life to help. As they run towards the forest, Tefana appears, concerned about the attack. Cain asks her to stay and protect the town and their home. Tefana promises to defend it with all her might, and Cain heads off. As they run, Seth wonders why Cain isn't teleporting. Cain explains that only he can teleport in this nation and asks Seth to show some restraint. Meanwhile, Dalmatia is fending off dragons, and when one flanks him, a giant flame saves him. Cain casts multiple infernos to destroy the monsters beneath him and senses a powerful presence in the center of the forest. Aaron taunts them, saying the game has already begun. The monsters continue rampaging, but Seth promises Cain that he will handle them while Cain faces their leader. Seth prepares to summon his underlings, but warns that he can't guarantee the forest will remain intact. Cain tells him to be careful and not go overboard. Seth, in turn, tells Cain to be careful as well, making Cain smile before he flies off. The ground quakes, and the army struggles to protect the townspeople as they run inside the town walls. Using her search ability, Nina notices the large number of monsters approaching, prompting Millie to rush towards the forest, determined to act like a teacher for once. Nina follows her, and Claude and his wife join them, setting off to help Cain while battling the monsters. Seth summons his loyal subjects, the 4 heavenly kings, who are shocked by the chaos. They wonder why Seth would summon them, and he reveals that his only friend has asked for help. The kings are astonished to hear that Seth has a friend. Dalmatia, equally surprised, explains that Seth has formed a contract with Cain, shocking the kings further. They question how someone could be powerful enough to form a contract with the Prince of Darkness. Dalmatia reveals that Cain is a great demigod, chosen by the gods. Seth promises to explain everything later but needs their help now, so they all join the fight against the monsters. As Cain flies over the battlefield, he uses his Inferno spell to shoot fire down on the monsters below, burning them up. Suddenly, a huge purple blast heads his way, and he just manages to dodge it. Another blast follows, but Cain blocks it with another Inferno. Aaron is frustrated that he's not fully revived and is stuck in a dragon's body. He sends more monsters towards the city, treating it all like a game to see if his monsters can wipe out the humans. On the other side of the forest, Claude and his group see people floating in the air, and realize they must be allies. Nina thinks they must be Cain's powerful friends. Even though they are struggling, Seth urges the 4 heavenly kings to keep fighting to help the humans. Nina uses her search ability to detect an approaching threat, and Millie, along with her brother, rushes forward to fight the beasts. As Cain faces Aaron, the god is furious because Cain looks like the people who sealed him away. Driven by anger, Aaron decides to end Cain and launches a dragon breath attack. Cain narrowly avoids it and sees how powerful the attack is. Aaron attacks again, but Cain leaps back and counters with Inferno, which doesn't harm Aaron. Meanwhile, Cain's friends are overwhelmed by the enemy forces. Claude and Millie stay hopeful and determined to support Cain. Cain summons Haku and Jin to help him fight the dragon. They dodge Aaron's attacks skillfully, but Haku is knocked out by a tail whip. As Aaron prepares a lethal blow, Nina runs out of magic, and Claude and Millie are at a standstill. Just as a giant beast is about to attack Claude, iron spears pierce its head, and Tefana arrives with reinforcements, taking over the front line defense. Haku gets hit badly, and Jin tries to protect him. Aaron gets ready for another attack, but Cain blocks it, declaring that he will protect his friends because he loves them. Cain's determination isn't from the gods but from his own heart. He activates his overload ability, and Aaron recognizes the familiar light. Cain uses his Saint Sanctuary with the wish to protect everyone. Their blasts clash, but Cain's determination starts to overpower Aaron. Light shines from Cain, reaching the sky as he vows to protect everyone's happiness and calls on his parents for strength. Haku and Jin bite Aaron, stopping his attack. Seth and Dalmatia scold Cain for causing unnecessary destruction, but Cain insists he was just trying to defeat the Black Dragon. With the monsters finally retreating from the forest, the attack ends thanks to Cain. Claude runs to hug Cain, but Tefana and Millie get there first. Cain feels happy, knowing he can help people in this world. Dalmatia praises him as a remarkable god's chosen. They share a laugh, confident that Cain will become one of the greatest heroes. Back in the king's room, the king was furious, demanding to know if Cain was responsible for the pillar of light visible from the castle. Cain tried to explain that the light was supposed to penetrate the black dragon since his intermediate magic wasn't enough, so he had to use a higher level spell. The king, exhausted and accepting defeat, realized that Cain was going to marry his daughter anyway. He pondered what reward to give him for his victory, and an advisor suggested giving him a domain. The king decided to reward Cain with his own domain. Cain stood before the king in the court, humbly accepting the domain of Dorenthal. Back at Garm's home, Tefana hugged him in tears, revealing that Dorenthal was a troubled town with a corrupt adventurers guild that had driven many nobles away. Teles thought it was unfair and wanted to confront her father, but Cain was excited about the challenge of rebuilding the town and making everyone smile again. He asked them all to help him, and they agreed, cautioning him not to overdo it. As they arrived in Dorenthal, the guards quickly recognized Cain's high rank. The king's messenger reported Cain's arrival to the king. Shortly after, the guild threw a welcome party for him, but Cain easily handled them with his fire powers. While at the tavern, he noticed men mistreating a cat girl and quickly put them in their place, kicking them out and making them land in awkward positions. However, Cain was soon locked up, but he effortlessly escaped. While chatting with his future wives, Seth came running for help, revealing that his wife had discovered his cheating and kicked him out. His demon wife, Lephane, appeared, unlocking a new type of plot, the Demon Milkers. Cain introduced himself to her, and when she asked about Seth, Cain called him worthless scum for cheating on such a beauty. Impressed by his honesty, Lephane expressed a desire to join Cain's harem. But Seth warned Cain that women change after marriage. Teles and the others thought Seth must have been sweet-talking Lephane during their vows, making betrayal unforgivable. Cain couldn't shake the feeling they were hinting at him. Lephane praised the girls for their honesty and promised that if Cain ever made them cry, he would regret it. She allowed Seth to return home once to show him true hell, and Seth bid Cain goodbye, never to be seen again. Cain then stormed into the church, uncovering and subduing the cult that was controlling the city. He built a massive wall around the town. Zenom, the god, thought it was great because they still had many tasks for Cain to do. Tefana and the girls were shocked by the size of the castle Cain was building, even larger than the king's. Cain laughed it off, confident in his abilities and status, knowing he was more significant than the king in many ways. They questioned the necessity, but Cain, remembering his past life's memories and his extraordinary noble status, knew this was his destiny. His friends, however, were not too happy with his grand plans, and that where this video ends. Watch this next video.